Hi, class. Today's lesson is going to be about the respiratory system. So let's take a look at what the respiratory system does, what organs are in the respiratory system, how it does its job, and then we'll get into some medical issues with the respiratory system. So the goal of the respiratory system is to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. When you breathe air in, the respiratory system delivers oxygen to the blood, right? So once the oxygen is in the blood, the circulatory system takes over and it transports oxygen to the cells around your body and it picks up carbon dioxide from those same cells. When you breathe out, the respiratory system removes the carbon dioxide from the blood and puts it in the air. So the main function of the respiratory system is to ensure that oxygen is brought to body cells and carbon dioxide is removed. Okay. The term respiration refers to the key events that exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, respiration is different from cellular respiration. Respiration is exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide with the air. Cellular respiration is cellular respiration is how the body, or sorry, how cells in the body make energy, right? So we have glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide and water and ATP. Okay, so they have some things in common. Maybe I should make this bigger. They have some things in common, but they're not the same thing. So don't get them confused. Respiration doesn't make any energy, right? It's just how we get carbon dioxide out and oxygen in. Cellular respiration does make energy. Okay, so respiration is pretty well breathing. Cellular respiration is making energy. Next. So, here we have an athlete, and her respiratory system is working. She inhales air containing oxygen. The oxygen moves from her lungs into her blood, where it can circulate around her body. Then carbon dioxide moves from the blood into her lungs, and she can exhale air containing a high percentage of carbon dioxide. Let's take a look at the organs of the respiratory system. What parts of the body are in your respiratory system? Yes, your lungs, but also some other parts. So the organs of the respiratory system conduct air from the atmosphere to the alveoli. The alveoli is a part of your lungs. Okay. So there are two main parts of your respiratory system. There's the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract covers everything before your lungs. Okay, so you can take air in through your nasal cavity, right, or your mouth. Your nasal cavity is a little bit better because it has a few features that your mouth does not. It has mucus and hairs that will filter the air of things like dust particles. So inhaling through the nose has some benefits that inhaling through the mouth does not. Your mouth I mean, your mouth has a little bit of mucus, but it doesn't have as much mucus as the inside of your nose, and it certainly probably doesn't have any hair. Okay. Where your mouth and your nose meet is your throat, the back of your throat. That's called your pharynx. So that has a special name in science. So your pharynx is your throat. And so the medical term for if you have a sore throat is pharyngitis, right? Your pharynx um, has inflammation. Okay, then you have so at the back of your throat, there are two openings, right? One is for food, one is for air. And you don't want the food to go down the airway. So we have this little flap called the epiglottis. The epiglottis will cover the airway when you're swallowing food. So, and if it doesn't do its job correctly, right? If it's too slow or it doesn't shut for some reason, you can choke. Right? That's what choking is food has gone down your airway and your lungs are trying to force air to remove the blockage. But normally it doesn't have to do that because of the epiglottis. Beneath, so now we have gone down into what's called your trachea, right? We've gone down that sort of airway that leads to your lungs. At the very top of your trachea, we have something called the larynx. Your larynx is your voice box. And of course, you can have laryngitis, and that is inflammation of your vocal cords. So you can see like the pattern here, right? Itis is a part of the word that means inflammation. And the first part of the word, it tells you what in your body is inflamed. Usually you don't have tracheitis. That's not a part of um, your respiratory tract that gets infected, but then we get down to the lungs. So your trachea eventually splits into two branches, and each branch is called a bronchus, right? So we have bronchus is one branch, or sometimes they're called bronchi together. So both branches are called bronchi. Okay, one branch bronchus, two branches bronchi, and you can have bronchitis, which is inflammation of your bronchi, right? So we're noticing a lot of the problems that we have with our respiratory system is really just inflammation. Okay, so each bronchus goes to a lung. You have your right lung and your left lung, and they're actually a little bit different. Your left lung has a little bit of a cutout, and that is, of course, where your heart is. Your lungs have lobes, and your right lung actually has an extra lobe. So you can see the lungs sort of, they have like chunks to them. Um, Underneath your lungs, we have a big muscle called the diaphragm, right? If you take a very, very deep breath, right, a deep belly breath, you can feel your diaphragm um, move down, right? Try it now. Take a big deep breath, the kind that fills your belly instead of like the top part, right? And you can feel a muscle move down and sort of squish on your stomach a little bit. That's your diaphragm. And then we have our rib muscles. The rib muscles are also called your intercostal muscles, right? That's another word for them. And your rib muscles and your diaphragm, they work together to help you breathe. So both of these things, whoops, both the intercostal muscles or rib muscles and your diaphragm, they will move so that your lungs can expand. So the diaphragm moves down, and the intercostal or rib muscles, they move out. So your rib cage will be pulled by your intercostal muscles, and that will create more space on the side of your lungs. And your diaphragm will push down, and that will create more space underneath your lungs. Um, One more thing I want to talk about with bronchi are bronchioles. Bronchioles are little branches of bronchi. So you'll notice that you can see the trachea comes down and it makes two big branches, but then you can see each branch, each big branch, it branches off into little branches. So bronchioles, right, just means little bronchi. Okay, so let's look at um, let's review the functions that each organ of the respiratory tract does. So remember, organs are parts of your body that contain different tissues that do a job, right? A little job, and the little jobs help the organ systems do their functions. So your nasal cavity has a couple features. It's lined with mucus, and the mucus traps some of the dust, bacteria, and other particles that want to go into your respiratory system through your nose. The incoming air is also warmed and moistened. This this is good for gas exchange. Okay. Eventually, we're going to have to exchange gas with the blood, and if the air is moist and warm, this is better for gas exchange. Then we have your pharynx. Your pharynx again is your throat, right? And that just your throat's job is to conduct air towards the larynx and food towards the epiglottis, right? It's the air food sorting system. And if everything goes well, your food goes to your stomach and the air goes to your lungs. Your larynx is, of course, your voice box. Your voice box contains the vocal cords, which make sound when air passes through them, and that is how I'm teaching this class. Trachea is the tube that connects the air from the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs. So it's just a passageway, but it's the main passageway um, uh, down down the front. And actually, one thing I want to mention is it's a little bit different from the esophagus. So the trachea, if you'll notice, so the trachea is in front and the esophagus is in back. But if you sort of press down your throat, just uh, beneath your larynx, beneath your voice box, you'll feel that there's sort of ridges, stiffer ridges in your trachea. Your trachea has rings made of cartilage. Cartilage is the stuff that's sort of like a bone, but softer and more flexible, like the tip of your nose has cartilage, and your joints typically have cartilage. Oh, your ear has cartilage. right? It the idea of cartilage is it's strong, but it's not bone strong. It's strong, but it's flexible. Uh, to Okay, we're back. Uh, so you always want your airway, your trachea open, so that you can remain breathing. So that is an important feature of the trachea. It also has the same as your nasal cavity. It has some mucus in it. It has some hair to like filter the air. Your lower respiratory tract consists of your bronchi, which are the two tubes that branch from the trachea and lead to the lungs. So just like the trachea, they're lined with mucus and cilia, which are hairs that trap or push out unwanted particles. If you are a smoker, your bronchi are working very, very hard to get the tar and other things out of your lungs that you have voluntarily breathed in, right? And Smokers who have been smoking for a long time, those cilia, because they have to work extra hard, they can break off, or they can become too overwhelmed with the mucus and the tar. And so, like this part, the mucus and the cilia, they don't do their job as well, or like sometimes smokers have a specific cough, especially in the morning, and that is your bronchi just trying to push out all of the stuff from your cigarettes. Okay. Um, Bronchioles are smaller tubes of bronchi that connect with alveoli. Alveoli, so this is the first we've heard of alveoli. So all of the tubes in your lungs, they end in little tiny grape-like sacs. So the air goes to the sacs, and the air sacs uh, are where gas exchange takes place. So this is where your respiratory system connects with the blood in your circulatory system, and oxygen goes one way and carbon dioxide goes in the other way. That's called gas exchange. It makes up most of the volume of the lungs. It right. So when you look at your lungs, right, the part that makes them so spongy are these alveoli, and it takes up more volume than the um, the tubes. Okay, so it's each alveolus, right? So singular for alveoli is alveolus. Let's see if I can write that down. Each alveolus is surrounded by capillaries, right? Remember, capillaries are your small blood vessels, and they have a very thin wall, and they're good for places where you need to exchange things with the surrounding cells. So some exchanging is going to go on here. So oxygen from your inhaled air diffuses from your lungs into the blood, and carbon dioxide waste diffuses from the blood to the lungs. Then you have your diaphragm, which is a muscle that controls breathing, and it contracts to move down when inhaling and relaxes to move up when exhaling. You have your intercostal rib muscles, which control breathing, and they contract to move the rib cage out when inhaling and relax to move the rib cage back in when exhaling.